Hello legends and super legends, welcome to Veloharmony. I made a video about the Specialized Venge bicycle and it was surprisingly very popular. I got a bunch of direct messages, a lot of comments about the video. It got good views, over 2K views. I did not expect it to run that well, but I guess a lot of people that are in the market for new bikes, it kind of struck a nerve and it got them concerned. And so I picked out a few comments. I picked out one particular comment I'm going to look at here. And then some of the direct messages, I've already taken the theme of what they were trying to get to. And I decided to do a follow-up video based on the comments that I've gotten because it just seemed right to kind of close out that topic as much as I can. Let's start with one of the comments from a new legend on the channel, the On-Revealer. He said, I answered his questions already, but I want to use that. He said that, thank you for another informative video. He said, I'm not a fitting professional like you, but such, from the first sight, he says, such minor things wouldn't even catch my attention. He's correct. I mean, that's the reason I started doing this channel. He said, I'm planning to upgrade to a better bike in the future, although not as costly as a car and 2 motorcycles. You know, he was being funny. And he said, this video made me stop and think. Well, that's good. That's the reason I do these videos. He said, if I caught your message well, that means fit-wise, is it safer to get a bike with traditional round seat tube ability to adjust seat back if needed, unlike bike with proprietary aero posts with very limited options. What he's talking about is the Venge and like the Giant Propel, where they've got their own little seat post that has a wet shape thing to hold it in the frame, where you can't just go to any place and buy a different seat post that will fit that. You have to get it from that manufacturer. Those of you who have the Trek Imonda, like Jose had, you know, it has like a cap that you put over a part of the frame that protrudes. So it's very, very proprietary. You got to get it from them. That's what he's talking about. And so I replied initially telling him that it was not the tube designs that control setback, but I basically misunderstood what he meant. So what he came back with, he said that what I meant is the setback options in the seat post. And that's the problem, like with the Imonda, they only go back to 2.0. And he was saying that, what if you want 3.5 millimeter setback? So my final reply to him was, why even buy a bike that will require you to get 3.5 millimeter setback? I didn't put the answer that way, but I hope he receives it. And then I decided that I would use his question to get into what I want to do today. So that's what I want to start today, is to look at, the topic will be basically, how do you shop for a bike? So let me go ahead and get my screen. Okay, what I want to show is that you don't need to be a fit professional to learn how to shop for a frame. The first thing you need to do is get either a frame sizing session done or get a bike fit done. People who do our fit, we give them their ideal frame specs. Once you're armed with that, you can go out and shop, and I'm going to show you how here. The reason being is that if you don't know your size, then it's a moot point to walk into a bike shop expecting to get top support, because they're just trying to move bikes, and it depends on the quality of the person you run into. You know, fit is something that requires a lot of skill. So you're not going to expect a guy that just rides and works in a bike shop to be able to fit you properly, you know. So to save yourself the headache, it's best to invest in knowing what you want. You're going to buy shoes, you need to know your size, the kind of brand that works for you, and so forth. The branding is important also because the manufacturers do different things. So as far as shoes go, you can be a size 45 European, or which is 11 US, and walk into a store, and if it's Cole Haan, it fits your foot great. If it's Ferragamo, it bows out around your ankle because of the styling, but it's still a size 45. That's my point. So let's get to it. So you want to buy a frame. I'm using one of the Colnago displays here to just show you the traditional geometry, and then we're going to start going at the other vendors. Let me move this tab to the end. We'll start with that. Okay. So I know for me, I know that my frame size ideally is around 56. When we do fits, we do center to center. Okay. If you look at this schematic. I increased the display here to just show you that center to center means from here, center of the bottom bracket, to the center of the lug right there. That's what Colnago is calling PCCS, this column here. Then they also have something called P, which is the same center of the bottom bracket to the top of the lug, P. So let's go down. So my center to center, my PCCS for me, which is what you need to find for you, mine is a 56. Ideally, center to center. I could ride a 57. Once you get your ideal, you can ride 1 or 2 centimeters up or 1 or 2 centimeters down within reason, depending on the top tube length. You can play with that because you can hedge with stems and so forth. But ideally, a 56 or even a 55, depending on the manufacturer, would fit me. So I'm going to shrink the display here. All right, so I want you to see all of this. So this is center to center 56 down here. Size, they're calling this a 56. Now, be careful because this size is not the 56 that you see in bold, because the PCCS was the 56 for me. So that's this 56 centimeters, 560 millimeters. They're listing them in millimeters. So the 56 center to center, Colnago is calling it 58. They're adding 2 centimeters for the lug. So the 56 center to center is a 58 size frame. So if you were ordering this frame, you would say, I want to buy a 58 in the arabesque. You could walk into the bike shop and do that once you did all your homework. That's how you would order it, because that's what they're calling it. They're calling it 58 for Colnago because that's the P. That's the center to the top of the lug. They're using that as the sizing, which makes sense. You're going to find that it gets crazier with the other manufacturers. So this makes more sense. So it's a 58 center to top. That's the size of the frame. That's what they call it. Now, I would look at the 56 and say, okay, that's my center to center. Look at that angle, 73. That works for me. And then I want to see my top tube length right here is called O. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see it. O is the top tube length right here. From the center here to the center there. Total top tube length. That's what they're measuring as O. So you come down here and you look for your frame size in PCCS. And you say O is 56.5. Now for me, that's a little short in this design, because I need 2 more centimeters. So for me, I would need a 14 stem on this frame size to get my reach that I like. Not the end of the world, but it's good to know ahead of time that you can decide. The other things that kind of helps me seal the deal is to look at what they call HS. You see HS here? That's the head tube height. I need 17 or less, 17 centimeters or less. So you can see in the 56 PCCS is 15. So that means I could go anywhere from 56 here to 58.3 and still have my drop reasonable. This is my current Colnago's drop, 17.1. PCCS 58.3, they call it a 61, but it's really 58.3 here. So you could go, you can see from 56, I could go to 58. That's 2 centimeters. Look at the 57 here. They have 2 57s. One is a 73, and look at this 57. One is 72.75. This is what I was talking about when I did the specialized Venge. 2 identical frame PCCSs with different seat angles. Colnago chooses to do that. So I was like, great. So this is nice. They don't do that on every size necessarily, but for some reason they chose to offer 2 different. And then look here on the 58.3, they did the same thing, but both of them have the same sizing. And what did they do? P is 620. What is P? Okay, that's the center to top. So the center to top, they've got 620 and 610. So they've got two different lengths. And that's because this one has a longer top tube. So if you have longer arms, Colnago is giving you the flexibility of ordering off the shelf a bike that has a longer top tube by almost 4 millimeters, which is the 59 versus the 58.6 here in the 61. So you could get a slightly longer top tube and use a shorter stem in the same height bike right here. Same seat post. They have more flexibility. These are the things you look for, you know. So when you start sizing a bike, so this is not custom. This is off the shelf, but they're adding more options in there, and that's kind of nice. So yeah, so there's so many frames here I could fit. I could start with the 56. I could do the 57, and actually, if I were buying a bike, since they're doing it this way, these 73s here, I would probably do this 57 and take this 72.75 so that I can move my saddle a little more forward instead of it being shoved all the way like on my current Colnago. Because let's see, actually no, it'll probably be the same because this is a 58.3 that I'm currently riding. So 17.1, that would be ideal. This is the size that I ride today. But it's just good to see that they've changed that. When I was getting that frame, I mean, I didn't see these options. So that's kind of nice. But I just wanted to point that out. Now I'm going to jump to, so you would look. So let me summarize before I jump to the other one. You want to look for your center to center size. After you find your center to center, you need to know your head tube length. You don't want it higher than what you need. Because if 17 is the highest that you want to have so that you can have a low enough drop, and you get something more than that, you're going to have problems getting low enough, getting your bars set correctly. So the height of your head tube, some people refer to that as stack sometimes. Okay, so you need to know that. As far as the angle of the head tube, yeah, it's good to know, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, you can make adjustments. The angle of the head tube, usually it'll run 73 or 74, you know, but that's not going to make too much of a difference. It might affect the length of stem you get, but it's really done for the handling at the front, how aggressive you want your steering to be and so forth. And that's kind of what, when people say the racing bike needs to have aggressive angles, that's where they tweak them. You know, head tube angle, fork rake, and then, you know, the chain stay length and so forth to get the handling of the bike a certain way. So now, with those three things that we know, let's go to S-Works. On the S-Works here, the challenge is we want to find out how they do their measurement. The similar, they don't even have a PCCS. So when you come to seat tube length, that's the first thing you want to look at. You can see that red line. That's like center to top. But look at this. If it's center to top, I'm going to move over here where it says 56.7. Center to top is 56.7, but they call it 61 up here. Okay? That's what they're calling it, which makes no sense. We left the Colnago. On the Colnago site, 58 was the center to top. That's what they called the bike, 58. So if this is 56.7 center to top, why not call the bike 56.7 or 57? That's what I'm talking about. Very confusing. So that's their center to top. That means center to center is about 54, maybe 55, depending on how far they measure it. So that means the frame is, so this is the size I would look at. And being that that would be the size, so it's got the angle I can use. And then the next thing you want to look at is the head tube length. This says 20. It's about 3 centimeters higher than I like. You know, so I'll be like, I don't know. I won't be able to get low enough because it's so high. That's the challenge there. So those are the kind of things it would stop me from buying that bike. Because I want my bars to be 8.5 centimeters below my saddle. This will not allow me to do that. It will be like 6.5 or 5.5. Because that's 3 centimeters too high for me. Those are the kind of things that's important to note. Okay, so let's go to the next manufacturer, Cannondale. They have a similar display, and all you do is you find a road, you find a model you want, and you look for geometry, and it will bring you to that. I just already had things displayed to kind of move this video along. So the first thing you want to look at if you're interested in Cannondale is, okay, let's see how they measure their seat tube. You can see they're doing center to top. So like in Colnago terms, it'll be the P measurement, which should be the size of the bike. But they don't do it that way. Look, the P measurement, which is center to top, is down here, but the bike measurement is something else. So where are they getting that from? Makes no sense. That's what I'm talking about. So for me, center to top here, 57.7, I would start looking at this frame, but they call it a 60. So if center to top is 57, I said, so I can ride this bike because it's probably a 56 because it's lower center to center. Because if you look at the picture, they're usually 1 to 2 centimeters, you know, because you're measuring to here, right there in the middle of these tubes. So about 2 centimeters. So the 57.7. So this bike should have been called here at 58. Where are they getting 60 from? That's what's confusing about these measurements. So the center to center 56, I would look there. Top tube horizontal 59.2. It's 0.7 millimeters longer than my Colnago. So what that means is I could ride this frame with an 11 centimeter stem and I'll be good. So seat tube angle is, that was the head tube angle. Sorry, I thought it was seat tube. Head tube angle 72.9. This might as well effectively be a 73. That's what I ride today. I would use a -17 stem on there. It would put me 90 degrees with the road. There's a lot of things you have to consider, and that's why you need to get expert help before you go shopping. Seat tube angle is 73.1. That would work for me. I could fit this bike with a setback seat post. And the challenge would be, as that gentleman asked earlier, is how much setback is on this. And you can see the line going through here and look at where the seat rails will be. So they've got a setback. I just don't know how much. And that's what he was saying. How do you find out? So you would definitely need to give them a call. I would do, if I'm going to spend this money, either you call them or you ask the people at the local bike shop you're going to get it from. They need to be able to tell you that before you plop your money down. If you're that attracted to the bike after you've looked at everything else, because you need to know how much setback. I want at least 2.5 to 3 centimeters setback. I don't want my saddle to be shoved all the way to the end. So I want about 3 centimeters setback on a bike like this. Rest of this stuff I could care less about. Head tube length is what I'm concerned about. Now look, 19.3 right there. So that tells me, okay, you're going to have to go down a size because this will get me where I want to be. So you see how you make your decisions. That's why you need to know. I can't go higher than a 17. The 2 millimeters, like 2 strands of hair. I'm not going to worry about that because my Colnago is 17.1 and I'm fine on that. So now I begin to start looking, and you see here it's the same. So this is 73.5. Well, we have a problem now. Now the angle here, because this is a smaller frame, they have a tendency to give them more aggressive angles because usually they're ridden by shorter people. So here it is now. This is more like a 53. So the frame begins to get too small. So now I'm going to move up here. I don't want to go to 62 because effectively this will be a 58. That's a bit big. 58. You know, so 72.7, that is a good angle. So I could probably ride a 58, but why? I like 55, 56. That's what works for me. You know, I'm spoiled because I got a custom bike, but that's the thing. If you're shopping, you look for that. So now I'm trying to see, okay, it's just kind of splitting hairs. I don't want a bike that big. I want something like this because it will handle better. But then this head tube length at 19.3. Let's see how they measure that. Head tube height, sorry. They call it head tube length, but it's really the height. The F right here. 18.3 is about 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters higher for me. It would increase the height of my front end. And I like my front end at 8.5, so it would be like 6.5. This would work better for me, but then this angle is off. That's the challenge. Those are the pieces you got to look at. That's why it's complicated. Let's go to giant. So in the same size, I'm going to look at the chart first. You can see they're doing again center to top. So we'll deduct 2 centimeters for center to center. So they're saying 57.5. They call it a large. So that's 55.5 would be the frame I would look at. I like the seat angle here at 73. I like the top tube length at 58. I could ride a 12 or 12 and a half if they still make the half sizes. Let's see, head tube length again, 18.5 is a bit much. That's a centimeter and a half too high for me. I would err on the side of this, but the problem is that's center to top. But this is what's weird though. Where's the angle? 73. So here it is. This is the thing with these manufacturers. Here it is. Giant has a bike 54.5 center to top, which means a 52. It says medium or large. This is a large, but look, medium or large, meaning I could ride it, although it's a little small when you think about it, because I ride like a 56. This is effectively a 54 center, 52 center to center. But look at the angle, 73 on a 52. Cannondale had a 73.5. So they're all playing around. You don't see a 73.5 on the giant bikes until you get to a small. So just looking at this, I would feel better shopping giant at this point based on what I've been going through. I had loaded these tabs. I had not looked at all this detail. I found them and put them in there just to do this for you guys. And I'm finding out, okay, giant has reasonable angles. So let me keep going down because 54.5, the angle suits me. Top tube length of 57 would allow me to use a 13 centimeter stem. Reasonable size. I could even do 14 if I wanted, but the 13 would work. Head tube here, 16.5 is perfect. I would put a spacer of 5mm spacer to be right at 17. This is a frame I can fit. Head tube angle of 73. I love 73. Put a -17 stem. I'll be 90 degrees with a road. So now, just based on what I've been looking at to do this video, I'm going to put Giant as my top brand to shop for me based on these specs. I hope you guys are seeing that. And I'll just summarize by looking at the seat tube angle in the height that's reasonable. You know, it says medium or large, meaning if you can ride a large, you can ride that. So you have the opportunity of going down a size and being able to fit the bike. The thing I would need to find out is how much setback is in the seat post, because I need about 2.5 to 3 with a 73-degree seat angle. You know, and then looking at this frame, it has a round seat post, so I could probably buy anything I wanted because this is not their aero bike or whatever. You know, so you have to look at all of this. And that was one of the questions that guy asked, opened the video with. So if they have a round seat tube here and nothing proprietary holding it, that's another thing. You got to make sure they're not using a wedge or anything. So, you know, and then you find out before you spend the money, can I get something with a setback that's more? And this is when you would want to go to the bike shop and see a copy of the bike. It doesn't have to be in your size. Just see the seat post, what's holding it. Can I get that? You know, what kind of setback? Those are the kind of things you do your research on, because you're not going to be buying bikes every day. You spend a little bit of time on it and you get the research before you pull the trigger. When you're shopping for the bike, don't worry about crank length and all this stuff. These are easily swapped out. You can tell them what you want. I ride 175s. So if I bought this frame size, I would get 175 down here. That's what I ride. That's the crank I ride. So I like the fact that I can go down to the smallest possible size here and still have a reasonable angle versus Specialized. You know, so Colnago and Giant seem to have the flexibility. Now let's go to Civello. There's their diagram. And if you look over here, let's see how they measure their bikes. That's the angle there, right? So Civello is using what they call stand over height, which I don't really like to use that much. You know, it's not as accurate. So since they're using stand over height, I'm going to back into my size. But first of all, the first thing I notice is, look at all the seat angles on Civello. Everything is 73 from a 48 to a 61, 73. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Manufacturers are making those choices. I could shop Civello. Makes sense. These are reasonably sized, even for shorter riders. So a guy here with short femur, he would use a straight seat post. He doesn't need setback seat posts because they already got a relaxed angle. The Civello is a racing bike. I mean, they even had a test team doing it. So when people talk about aggressive angle, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be able to fit the bike. You know, so right here, the 56 is a 73, 73. Gives me more flexibility. What I would look at now is to say, okay, let's look at what they're calling a 56 may not necessarily mean the bike is a 56. So you got to be careful with that. So what I'm looking at is the top tube length right here. I like this. So I would take their 58 then, because this is 58. I don't want a 56. I'd have to use a very long stem on that one. So I would take the 58 where I could ride with a 12, as opposed to this where I would have to have a 14 or something like that. So that would work, but it would just be a longer stem. So Civello gives just as much flexibility as Giant. I love the fact that all their angles are 73. So somebody had asked about branding a while back. You know, is one brand preferred over another? And hopefully they can use this video to see that you choose the brand based on what you're looking for and what brand fits you best or easiest. That's what you want to look for. I like this. They've got a 73 head tube, 73 seat tube. I can fit this bike in my sleep. This is a 58. I'd buy a 12 centimeter stem. I'm done. Right here. So this bike, in their bike, I would pick it 58 because that gives me the top tube length I need. Even though they did not put the measurement on here, I'm looking for my reach to make sure I can fit the reach, because it kind of corresponds to what they're calling standover height. You know, so knowing your top tube length is important. This is almost 60. That's a long top tube. I don't need a bike that big. Okay, so this is what I wanted to cover, is to just say, and I'm going to summarize here. You need to know your seat tube height. That's the first thing you need to know. And then you need center to center. And then you need to know your seat tube angle, meaning the maximum angle you can tolerate so you can be able to set your position. And you also need to know that the bike you're buying has enough of a setback seat post so that you're not using up the maximum rails, because some saddles have very short rails. I've found that the S&P saddles has almost 10 centimeters of rails, which is one of the longest out there. But if you get a frame that is sized correctly with the right shallow angles, if you're a tall person, the right angle to fit you, if you've already done your frame sizing and your fit and so forth, then you don't have to worry about an aggressive setback. Aggressive meaning 3.5 centimeter setback seat post. A 2 centimeter setback seat post would work if you've got the right frame size. You know, so that's the key. So Civello, Giant, Colnago, even the Cannondale was reasonable. I mean, I'm going back to them to look at their angles. The seat tube angle for the 56 was it's about 74. So they're closer. So Cannondale and Specialized seem to have more aggressive angles in their mid-size, medium to large size frames. And then when you get to the bigger ones, and they get lower. Civello and Giant seem to offer more relaxed angles throughout the range. I mean, you don't get to a 73.5 until you get to a small frame. And Civello just gives everybody 73, same seat angle. So if you're somebody with a short femur, you don't need to worry about a setback seat post. I kind of like that, you know. So I would place the ones that I've reviewed, as far as if you're into carbon and you know, whatever it is you're into, Civello seems to have the most flexibility as far as being able to be fitted to easier. And then Giant is next, and then Colnago. Specialized and Cannondale, you got to be real careful with them because their angles are very aggressive if you're very tall. So you want to make sure you know your measurements, because their frames have very aggressive seat tube angles. With that, I'm going to end this video. So I hope that this will help those of you that are shopping for bikes.